A man's heart can split without sound, and his life can go on as if nothing ever happened. That was the rancher's secret grief. Years ago, death had taken his sister, a girl no older than 10, and the prairie had swallowed the sound of his cries. He grew into a man of hard silence, the kind who worked until his hands bled just to keep from remembering. On this winter night, wind prowled across the plains like a hungry beast, rattling the loose boards of his barn. He worked by lantern light, driving nails into the fence, telling himself he was mending wood, not the emptiness in his chest. When the sound came, it startled him. Soft, quick steps pressed into frozen ground. Not the heavy rhythm of cattle, nor the sure tread of a rider. He turned, breath-catching, and out of the dark drifted 2 small figures. Children, barefoot, thin, wrapped in threadbare cloth that clung to their trembling shoulders. Their hair whipped in the wind, and their eyes, wide and shining, seemed carved from fear. They stood as if unsure whether to approach or flee, but the cold had already stolen the choice from them. The rancher's voice, rough with disuse, slipped out. "Come inside." He didn't shout. He spoke low, like a man soothing a spooked horse. They didn't answer, only glanced at each other and stepped closer, their bare feet sinking into snow. When he ushered them toward the cabin, he noticed how the older one kept her arm around the younger, pulling her tight against her side. A protective gesture, so fierce it lodged in his chest like a nail. Inside, the fire lay smoldering. He stoked it to life until flames reached high and shadows danced across the wooden walls. The children crouched near the hearth, shivering as heat touched their faces. Their cheeks were streaked with dirt, their lips dry and cracked. He placed bread on the table, pouring warm milk into tin cups, and the younger girl reached eagerly, but the elder pulled her back, cautious, uncertain of this stranger's kindness. The rancher knelt then, holding out the bread with hands scarred and calloused, yet gentle in the offering. At last, the older girl accepted, breaking the loaf and giving the larger piece to her sister. He watched them eat, felt something ache deep inside. His cabin had not known laughter or small voices in years, and though they were silent, their presence carried a strange hum, like a song forgotten but faintly remembered. His thoughts drifted unbidden to his lost sister, and for the first time in a long while, memory did not feel like an open wound, but like a lantern carried through the dark. Hours passed. The children curled on a quilt before the fire, the younger resting her head against her sister's chest. Their breathing softened into sleep. The rancher sat by the table, rifle propped against the wall, eyes fixed on the door. A storm brewed in his mind. Who were they? Where was their kin? To take them in for a night was one thing, but what if no one came? He felt the weight of unseen eyes pressing against the walls. The plains were never empty, and nothing wandered without cause. At length, the older girl stirred. Her voice, when it came, startled him. Low and steady, carrying dignity beyond her years. "We were lost," she said. "Our mother is looking. Our people are far." Then her eyes, dark and luminous, met his, and he felt the strange pull of truth. She was a child, yet she spoke with the solemnity of someone who had walked too close to sorrow. He nodded once, saying nothing, for he understood the weight of words left unsaid. Outside, coyotes howled, their cries sharp as broken glass against the frozen night. He loaded his rifle and set it within reach, though he knew no coyote had delivered these girls to his yard. The fire cracked, a branch split, and sparks leapt upward. He realized that in opening his door, in feeding them, he had stepped onto a path that could not be turned back. His solitude, once fortress and curse, had been breached by 2 fragile souls who had asked nothing yet demanded everything. Sleep did not come to him. He sat upright, listening to their breathing, each rise and fall of their small chests. With every sound, he felt his heart tugged toward some long-forgotten tenderness. The night grew heavy, stars fading into pale light. Snow still fell, soft and relentless, muffling the world beyond his windows. He thought of dawn, of what might arrive with it, kin searching or danger looming. Then, just as the horizon blushed with the faintest red, a shadow stirred across the yard. A figure moved through the snow, tall and unyielding, walking as if the wind itself parted to let her pass. The children woke at once, springing from a quilt, their cries sharp with recognition. They rushed outside, their small hands clutching the skirts of the woman who had come. She was young, yet carried herself with the gravity of old earth, perhaps 26 at most. Her face was marked with hardship, her eyes black pools of fire and grief. She bent, embracing the girls, pulling them so close her body trembled. Then, straightening, she turned her gaze upon the rancher. Her look was neither gratitude nor accusation, but something else, something that bound. Her words came slow, heavy, undeniable. "Now you belong to us." The rancher stood motionless, the cold morning air searing his lungs. He could not say whether he had been claimed, blessed, or cursed. Behind him, the fire smoldered, its glow faint against the endless snow, as if waiting to see which way the wind would turn. The morning spread across the plains like a pale fire, the snow gilded in gold where sunlight touched it. Yet the rancher felt none of that warmth. He stood rooted in the yard, her words echoing in his chest. "Now you belong to us." The woman's voice had not trembled. Her gaze had not wavered. She held her daughters, as if she had wrestled them back from death itself, and still she found breath enough to claim him. He thought of his quiet years, of the silence he had built like a wall around himself, and for the first time that wall felt fragile, thin as frost on glass. The girls clung to their mother's skirts, peering up at her, then at him, as if waiting for the shape of this new bond to reveal itself. He felt a strange mixture of pride and unease. He had saved them from the cold, given them bread and warmth, but he had never asked to be bound. Still, when the youngest reached for him with a small hand before hiding against her mother's shawl, something inside him shifted. He led them inside, the fire now a steady roar. The woman sat near the hearth, untying the girls' shawls, her movements efficient yet tender. She did not thank him, not in words. Instead, she studied the room, her eyes taking in every beam, every worn chair, every tool hanging by the wall, as if measuring the shape of the man who lived there. He felt stripped bare beneath her gaze, though she spoke little. Later, as he stepped outside to chop wood, he saw his neighbor Amos riding across the ridge. The old man's shoulders were bent, his beard white with frost. Amos dismounted, his eyes narrowing when he spotted the figures moving within the rancher's cabin. "Best send them off," Amos muttered, leaning close, voice low. "Folks in town won't like it, and worse, some will call it danger. You don't want trouble, boy. You've had enough of that." The rancher's jaw clenched, but he said nothing. Amos's words rang true, yet the thought of turning them away burned in his chest like betrayal. When he returned inside, the woman's eyes met his. She had heard. She did not ask whether he agreed or resisted. She simply said, with quiet strength, that when he opened his door, he had stepped into their circle. Her people knew this truth, even if his did not. Survival bound lives together. He tried to protest, but her words silenced him. You cannot feed a child, warm a child, and then call yourself alone. That night, after the girls had curled into sleep once more, she told him pieces of her story. Her husband had been taken in a raid. Her people scattered, some gone to ground, some gone to grief. She had searched for her daughters in storm and shadow until her feet bled. And now, with them found, she could not imagine losing them again. Her eyes shone in the firelight, not with weakness, but with fire tempered by sorrow. He realized she was younger than he first thought, yet already she carried a weight that might break stronger souls. He listened, and something unexpected stirred in him, not pity, but respect. In her silence, in her refusal to beg or bow, he saw a strength he could not name. She was not a woman in need of saving. She was a woman who demanded recognition, who declared belonging not as gift, but as law. Days passed in fragile balance. The girls played quietly with scraps of cloth, their laughter softening the edges of his solitude. Yet word traveled, as it always did. Whispers reached town, where men muttered over whiskey that the rancher had taken in strangers, perhaps enemies. One evening he rode in for supplies and felt the heat of their stares. Voices rose around him, warning, mocking, threatening. "Better leave them to their own," they said. He gripped the counter until his knuckles whitened, holding back the storm within him. At last he turned, saying only that the girls were children, nothing more. His voice shook, half with anger, half with the fear of what he was binding himself to. By the time he returned, night had fallen. He opened the door to find them waiting by the fire. The woman rose slowly, her daughters already drifting into sleep against the quilt. She looked at him with the steadiness of the plains, her words soft but unyielding. You chose this the moment you opened your door, the moment you fed them. You are not alone anymore. The rancher felt the ground shift beneath him, as if the land itself had turned. He saw her not as stranger, not even as claimant, but as mirror. She had lost and carried on. He had lost and buried himself in silence. Now both stood before the same fire, tied together by children who had looked at him with trust. His chest tightened with something fierce, a blend of fear and longing, as if belonging itself could be salvation and ruin at once. Outside, the wind howled against the cabin walls. Inside, flames leapt higher, shadows twisting on the beams. The girls slept safe, their small breaths weaving the room with innocence. The rancher sat across from the woman, the fire between them, his hands restless, his heart racing. He knew the storm beyond these walls was only beginning, and that tomorrow would demand more than shelter. It would demand a choice that could cost him everything, or give him back a life he thought forever lost. The fire cracked, sparks flying upward. Her eyes held his across the glow, steady as stone, unblinking. He realized then that her words had not been a threat, but a promise. Now you belong to us. And for the first time in years, he was afraid not of being claimed, but of what it might mean to accept.